Alrighty, so I wanted to get you guys starting to at least block in our first project. Now, last year we did a crab, and I always like to mix it up a little bit for a lot of our projects. Like we did a bipedal troll last year. We did a spaceship. We did a fantasy environment. This year I want to do a science fiction environment. We're going to do a car, and we're going to do a quadruped. However, I really kind of find the crab is just a good starting project period. Some of you guys that have been in the class before, it'll be a great opportunity for you guys to really take Blender further, particularly since we only kind of get to do it for the last project last year and thrown into it. And you can just really make an insanely awesome crab, right? But we also want to make sure to have an easy enough project for all of the new students that are going to be coming to the class as well. So this will be repeat. I just find that particularly for the first project, getting us in after we've been out for the summer, if it's your first time, it's just great. And you can always make it as detailed and as complicated as you want if you guys have had my class before. So we are going to do kind of like a crab creature again. It doesn't have to be a literal crab. It's more like a four-legged kind of insectile-like character creature. And we'll kind of add some dynamics to it. But we are going to model it. We're going to sculpt on it, UV wrap it, texture it. We're going to kind of complete it, right? So yeah, we're going to do a crab. In this case, I want to start with a new general scene, right? These are the stuff I'm working on myself, so you guys can ignore those, right? Unless you've already started your stuff in Blender. So I'm just going to say general, because that just gives us this default cube in here, right? Now, I'm also going to switch to modeling tab, right? Because that kind of sets us up to be more focused with some modeling tools right here. So it's really kind of a good idea to always kind of pick the workspace that you're going to be working in, right? That you're going to be focused on. Remember, go to Edit, Preferences, Key Map to turn on Industry Compatible, right? It's that little pull down. Navigation, it's a good idea to zoom to mouse position. I personally like horizontal instead of vertical for zoom access. So I had switched that, but that's neither here nor there, right? It's personal preference to a certain extent. Zoom to mouse position is a useful one, though. And that's all we really need to do in the kind of edit preferences, at least for now for you guys. Remember, Alt, left, rotate your camera. Alt, middle mouse button moves your camera. Alt, right mouse button zooms your camera. Remember, Alt is the key that's next to the space bar on your keyboard, right? So Alt and your mouse buttons, right? If you only have a trackpad on your Surface or whatever device you're working on, if it's a laptop, if it's one of the school devices they give you, get a mouse. Trying to do it with the trackpad is going to be horrible, guys. You need a mouse, right? It doesn't have to be an expensive mouse. It can be a cheap mouse. You can probably borrow them from, ask Mr. Myers again about it, right? And I'm sure he'll be able to give you some mice. So kind of one of those things that we're not going to get that far this week. I just want to make sure you guys had some content to start to peruse this week as we go into next week. We're really just going to start this guy barely off. We're not even going to get close to finishing modeling it, and there's a lot of other things besides modeling it, right? We're going to sculpt it, UV edit it, paint it, shade it. But at least it gets us, interacting with Blender besides just watching a video about, hey, this is Blender's interface. All right, so just kind of keep that in mind. Be in your modeling viewport. Make sure you've got that industry compatible from preferences on, right? Key map, industry compatible, right? Alt left, alt middle, alt right mouse button. That lets you zoom navigate. So what we want to do is, now that we're in this position, what we want to do is, remember, 4 is object mode, right? So 4 is going to take you to object level. And you can select an object or not, right? If I click off, it's deselect. You see how there's nothing highlighted in here. If I left click on it, you'll see how it's highlighted. You kind of get this little orange highlight around there. That's actually, believe it or not, a preference in these things like outline, right? That kind of gives you color control over it. I think it's right there, actually. So remember, kind of these little things kind of give you preferences that you can kind of see stuff with. The defaults are honestly fine, so I wouldn't change those too much. But remember, these areas do kind of give you the ability to change what's going to be displayed in your view. But when you click on the object, if it's got like a nice little orange outline around it, you'll notice that's the selected object. Now, in this case, I kind of find seeing the camera and the light and the viewport and modeling annoying. So remember, over here, in your scene collection section, right? This is basically your Blender's version of a scene outliner. You can actually turn the eyeball off for camera and the eyeball off for light. I'll talk to you guys a little bit later on how you can create different collections that you can just put your objects in and your cameras in. It's kind of neat, but we don't really need to do that quite yet, right? So yeah. All right. So just this object selected. Remember, F is that frame selection quick key. That is in the view menu here, though, right? So a little view menu here, frame selected A, frame all is A, frame selected is F. And that's just a great way to kind of zoom in and set your camera rotate around whatever's selected. In this case, a whole object, right? So this is your whole object. And we'll talk about things like triangles and quadrangles and n-gons and why we want them next week, right? I just really want to get you guys exposed to some quick keys, basic quick keys, and get to do a little bit of modeling this week, right? Ideally, on our Thursday and Friday classes. So yeah, we've got our cube in here. That's kind of what happens when you first go into Blender and you tell it to just use the general kind of option. It just drops a cube in, right? So there's a cube. Now at this point, though, we really need to set this up to work properly for this, right? We could do some modeling on this with our different selection types, but realistically, one of the things that I want to do is I want to mirror this, right? I want it so that what I do on one side will happen to the other side. And that's going to allow us to see a few useful modifier features, right? And then we're just going to add a few edge loops and do a little bit of extruding. Nothing too complicated. We're going to start a leg and get it kind of a simple body and a basic leg going, right? So basically, what we want to do is I'm in 4, right? 4 for object mode. It is here though. It is this little pull down menu, object mode. Now, if I hit 2, right? 2 takes us into edit mode, right? Really 1, 2, or 3 take us into edit mode. And they just focus on vertex, edge, or face. So remember, 1 is vertex, 2 is edge, 3 is face, right? And that's 1, 2, 3, 4 that are above QWER, right? They're the kind of numbers above your letters, not on the number pad on the right side of your keyboard. And once we're in there, right, I can click off because the object is still selected, but now we can select specific edges, right? Remember, by default, your selection tool's on, and it's usually box. Q cycles, though. So if you hit Q, it cycles between all your selection types. Now, you notice there's a lot of tools here. And one of the most powerful and useful tools, whatever package you're in, is Loop Cut. Now, you'll notice there is a default quick keyboard of Alt-C. So you can click on it here, but you can also just, up here, if I hit Alt-C on my keyboard, it's on, right? So Alt-C is your quick key for that. Now you'll notice by default it snaps to the center, and that's actually quite cool. And in this case, that's what I want, right? I'm going to kind of work on this axis right here, kind of the x-axis, right? Because remember, that's your x, that's your y, this one's your z. And I want to put an edge loop right down the center. So if I just left-click, right, and you notice how when you get closer to the edge itself, it shows up. When you're kind of in the center of the face, it doesn't really show up. And you'll notice that it's perpendicular, right? It's perpendicular to whatever edge you're closest to, right? And if I left-click close to that edge, particularly when you see the yellow, right? The yellow is a good indicator. It puts an edge loop in. What's an edge loop? Well, it is a loop of edges. Guys, it's one of those things that's kind of, once you see it put in and you understand what an edge is just a line between two vertices. A loop is an edges that go end to end in a circle, basically, a loop, right? Edge loop. So that's what your loop cut tool does, right? There are ways to do loop selected. In particular, if you turn on some edit some of the add-ons that I'm going to show you guys later on that come with Blender, super easy to turn on. Also, they give you some extra functionality. Some of you guys from last term, remember we kind of went to Blender, and I knew it fairly well, but guys, I love Blender now, and I'm very much know it a lot better. So some of you guys that had Blender last year at the end, you're going to see it's cooler than I was even showing you last year, right? I just know it better. Usually I teach Maya, so, we had to switch on the fly, and I knew Blender well enough to teach it, but, I know it even better now. So it should be really, really cool doing it for us. So we just left clicked and put an edge right down the center. Now, of course, Q is a great way to just turn your loop tool off, right? So it's off and it's back to your selection tool. Now, this is good for you guys to know, and this is one of the things industry compatible does also. I'm still in edge mode, right? 2 for edge mode. If I double left click, right? Just double click with my left mouse button on an edge, it selects an edge loop. That is really, really cool, right? So that's quite useful. Now, in this case, we don't really need to do that, but it's useful. Now, in this case, what I want to do is I want to get rid of half this model so we can mirror it over and get our subdivisional surface on it and all that stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit 3 for face mode, right? Remember, 1 is vertex, 2 is edge, 3 is face. Once you're in edit mode, though, right? Remember, if you click up here on this little pull down, there's object and edit mode right there. So if you're still kind of trying to remember these quick keys, right, which is totally understandable, they are right here. There's this little pull down that switches, right? And the actual vertex, edge, and face modes are right here. So just generally, even the overall interface in the Blender 2.8 series is now great. Makes a lot of sense. And they've got lots of great default quick keys. In fact, the 1, 2, 3 quick keys are Moto quick keys. So they actually stole a lot from Maya and Moto, which were, I was a big Moto lover. Still am. Just love Blender now. So kind of cool. In this case, what I want to do is I want to select this face, right? So I just left click on that face and it selects it, right? Just left click and the face gets selected. Now, I want to grow this selection, right? Because I want to really select half of it. So the cool thing is once you have a face selected, there is grow and shrink, right? So if we go in the select menu, you will see that there is select more and less, up arrow, down arrow, right? In the select menu, there's a select more or less, up arrow, down arrow. More will take this face and expand it to the next faces to it. Less will do the opposite. It'll shrink it. So if I hit the up arrow, you'll notice it takes this selection and expands it to the ones around it. You'll see this called expand or grow and shrink in other software, right? But this is in the select menu because it is for selecting. So if you're ever in any doubt or you want to find a selection tool, pretty much all the selection tools are going to be in this select menu here, all right? In this case, select more and less, up arrow, down arrow. Now, to delete these faces, because that's how we get rid of them, we hit delete on our keyboard. And you'll notice when you hit delete on your keyboard, it does give you options, right? In this case, we want to delete faces. And now those faces are gone. Now, to apply the modifiers I want to, we want to do that to the object level. So I'm going to hit 4 for object mode. Remember, it is up here, right? Object mode, edit mode. It's a little pull down right here. And these are really the modes we're going to use for right now. Later on, we'll see sculpt and texture paint, but the 2 top modes in this area right here are there. But 4 is the quick key for it. So in this case, we put an edge loop down the center with loop cut. We selected the faces on half of it, and we hit delete and pick the face option because it brings up a menu. And then we went back to object mode, right? 4 for object mode. And we want to go to the blue wrench over here, right? So the blue wrench, right? There's a lot of these little tabs here, but there's one that's a blue wrench. And we're going to go to the add modifier pull down, right? It's this little menu up here. And you'll see there's a feature called mirror. I'm going to turn that on. And you'll notice all of a sudden, there is another half on that side. Now, you can pick the axis you want to mirror it on, right? So if I want to mirror it on the Z-axis, I can. If I want to mirror it on the Y-axis, I can. In this case, X-axis is fine. That's what I want to mirror it on. It wasn't showing up on the Y and the Z because it wasn't down, right? You would have to cut it like this way or that way to properly see it. But you can pick the different axes. You can actually do all of them at the same time, which is kind of neat. But for us, the default X-axis is going to work fine because that's the red, right? That's what we're working on. Now, we do want it to show all the way through, right? So I do like kind of turning on this little triangle, right? Kind of say there's like a square and a triangle. So I like to turn that on because it shows kind of everything through the modifier stack. We want the merge limit to be up a little bit, but not a lot, right? Because I don't keep the vertices down the center merged. Now, last year, we didn't turn clipping on. I didn't even really realize what clipping did, right? Ask some of the students who were in the class last year. When you turn clipping on, it actually keeps the center from moving off, even when you're doing extrusions, which is awesome. When I found this, I was like, all right, the mirror tool is pretty awesome in Blender. I liked it before, but it's actually quite cool. So this actually has been in there for, I'm sure, ever. Definitely in the 2.8 series. It was just one of those things I didn't know about yet, because I knew Blender decent enough, but, you know it quite well now. So clipping really, really useful. It's going to actually make it so that we can't pull the center seam off of here, which is going to be really, really cool. So when you do go here and you do add the mirror modifier, right, so this is pull down, you do want to turn this one on, right, that guy to see through there. If you're working like I am, x-axis should already be on and should work fine. Maybe give your merge limit a little bit higher than the 0.001, but don't turn it up terribly high, and make sure clipping is on. And you'll have a mirror that works quite great. Now, the last thing we want to do, though, is we want to make this look more rounded, right? Because we're making a crab, it's organic. We want some roundness to it. So we're going to go back up to the add modifier here, and we're going to go to subdivision surface. And what that does is see how it kind of rounds it off. Now, the nice thing is I'm going to show you guys how to rectify the shading here in a minute, but you'll notice that really what a subdivisional surface does is it kind of takes the cube and it subdivides it. That's why it's called a subdivisional surface. Subdivide means it takes the quads, the polygons, and it breaks that polygon into 4 smaller polygons. But subdivisional surfaces also at the corners kind of pull in the shape, pull in the vertices to round it off, making it look more curved. And now you'll see that there actually are 2 modifiers in here, right? Your mirror modifier and your subdivision surface modifier. And this has a triangle too. Usually I turn these on because it lets you kind of see that effect throughout the whole stack. So usually it's good to have those on. By default, everything else in the subdivision modifier is fine. Now, at this point, we can fix the shading in a minute here, but I do want to show you, before I fix it, what's happening. So if I hit 3 for face mode, right? Remember, 3 is our quick key for face mode, right? It's in edit mode, but 3 is the quick key for it. You'll notice the subdivisional surface, you're still selecting the simple quad, right? In particular, if I turn this off, right? That's what you can kind of see what's going on there, is it's kind of showing it or not showing it, right? Particularly when you're in edit mode, right? It's kind of really letting you see it in kind of edit mode. You're really working with the simplified geometry. And what a subdivisional surface is doing is it's kind of giving you a virtual, more rounded geometry with more polygons, but it's virtual, right? You can get rid of it. Remember, reapply it though, right? Subdivision surface. You can tell it to see through, and then you're selecting right on it. Very cool. Now I'm going to hit 4, right? To go back into object mode again. Because I want this shading to look better, right? Right now this looks faceted. I want it to look smooth. So if you right click, right? We saw that in the previous video. When you right click, it brings up the menu that's for the context of that selection type here. In this case, we're in object mode. So you see how this is different than our vertex, edge, and face? And at the very top is shade smooth. What that does is that actually kind of blends the shading between the polygons. You notice how it's the same polygons, right? It hasn't added more polygons, but it just shades them collectively to look smooth and rounded instead of like a jewel, kind of separate. So at this case, I want to go back to 3, right? 3 for face mode. Remember though, it is just kind of object edit mode here, and then once edit mode's on, it's these guys, but 3 is the quick key for it. And you'll notice that I can select this face, right? Select the front one, and W for our move tool. Now there is a tweak tool that makes this really easy, but let's use the move tools for now, right? Just to get you guys started, at least for the newer students. So W, remember, is your move tool quick key, but it is right here, right? Particularly if you're in modeling and you're in edit mode, one of the edit modes. And what I can do is I can just grab that green arrow and move it. I can then left click on the back one here, left click, drag on that green arrow, move it. Now, in this case, what if I moved it on the red arrow? You notice how it doesn't pull that center seam off? That's what clipping does, right? If that's off, you'll notice it will pull apart, right? Unless you have a high merge limit, and then that causes all kinds of other problems. So clipping is awesome. Kind of keeps those together. So yeah. So we can just kind of start to move these out to get this shape. And it's kind of a bit of an elongated crab. And what I want to do, maybe bring this one out a little bit. So you see I'm in face mode, right? And I'm just left clicking, right? And it just lets us select the face when I left click on it. And you'll see the move tool stays on. When we hit W, it stays on. So we can just keep using the move tool for wherever we move. Now in this case, I need to add in a few more edge loops to allow us to shape, because there's only so much you can do with a cube, right? You need to add some more edge loops to give you more polygons and vertices to get more shape. Now remember, that's here, right? It's in this kind of menu right here, loop cut. It is actually, if you go to edge mode, right, for edge selection type, if you right click, you'll see there is loop cut slide there as well. But it is here as a tool, and the quick key for it's Alt-C. Alt-C. Now, we saw before that if we just left click, it automatically snaps to the center, kind of perpendicular to the edge. But if you hold down the left mouse button and drag, it'll slide it. So by default, if you just left click, it will put it right in the middle, right? But if you left click drag, you can slide it in there. Kind of cool, right? Now, I'm going to hit Q to go back to my regular selection tool. And I can just select this edge, right? Because we're in edge mode now. 2 for edges, but remember, they're right here. So if you've gone to edit mode, they're all right here, but 2 is the quick key for it. And I can select that edge, W for the move tool, just move this down. I can select this edge, we can move it forward and down. Remember, if we grab this little square, it'll move it 2 at a time. And if you grab the center one, right, see how there's this kind of light white circle in the center? That's your view move, right? That'll be based on the view itself. The cool thing is middle mouse button actually does that for you. So you don't even have to grab that. If you just hold on middle mouse button, it will allow you to do view move, which can allow you to pretty quickly and easily shape. Particularly for something more organic like this crab guy. Now, of course, if you feel more comfortable left-click dragging on the arrows, that's fine. But it's kind of neat to have those. It's kind of neat to know that the middle mouse button does view move. Super cool, actually. I love it. It's one of my favorite features about Blender. So we've got our crab. And so what I want to do here is I want to kind of extrude a bit of a leg off for us. So I kind of feel like I need another edge loop here to give us a little more geometry, just so that leg's not coming exactly out from the side here. So go back here to loop cut. Alt-C is the quick key for it. And we can left click drag, kind of just put that edge loop in there. All right. And then of course, you know, we could hit Q for our regular selection tool, and then, you know, W for move, right? Remember, they're all right here though. Selection tool, move tool. And you see I can kind of go in here and I can do some more shaping if I wanted to. You just left click. Right, just left click on an edge, and you can move it out. Whether you want to move it using one of the handles or just middle mouse button for view move. And now what I want to do is I want to create a leg, and this is going to show you one of the other major tools, right? Loop cut we've seen a couple times now. I want to show you the extrude tool. So I'm going to hit 3 for face mode, right? So we want to go to face selection mode. Remember, object and edit mode are right here. When you're in edit mode, you get vertex, edge, and face, but the quick keys for those are 1, 2, 3. 3 is face mode. It's that last one. And this, of course, allows us to grab a polygon. In this case, you'll notice we're putting in a whole edge loops, and all of these polygons we're keeping as quads, right? They look a little bit rounded, but you'll notice that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 vertices making this up. Quads are our friend. These videos, since I just want to get you guys to start make something and using the tools and use Blender is cool, but next week I'll actually start to talk to you really more specifically about polygon types and a few concepts. But this week I just want to get you guys making something, right? So, but quads are our friends. You really want to generally work with quads. So don't go adding partial loops and end up with huge triangles or 8-sided polygons. That's not going to be good, right? So what's the extrude tool do? Well, it's really basically a tool for making appendages, right? It's going to take this face, it's going to allow us to move this face away from the surface, kind of see out here, but it's going to create new quads connecting that face that's moved over here to this original one. Basically allowing us to create a leg, fingers, appendages, any appendage structure the extrude tool is great at doing. It is right here, and you'll notice the quick key for that is Control-E, which is actually the exact same quick key it is in Maya, right? So we click on that, and you'll notice it gives us this handle. Now, the yellow plus one will move this basically along the normal direction. We'll talk about normal direction more next week. This outer one will do a view extrusion, right? So it'll just kind of let you free pull the extrusion. So I'm going to do just a little bit, and I'm going to use the free pull, which in fact, middle mouse button will do, right? So if you just hold down the middle mouse button, it does the free extrusion. But whichever way you like doing it, grabbing the yellow plus to move it directly out along the way the polygon's facing, or the white circle, which is kind of view, just moves according to view, which middle mouse button will also do, that will allow us to extrude. Now in this case, I really only want to extrude out once to there to kind of give us a start for the limb. I'll hit W for move. Now, remember, you can grab on the handles, right? And you can even grab on these little squares. But middle mouse button kind of does that view move, which for this guy is going to be great. So I encourage you guys to use middle mouse button for view move. But if you don't feel comfortable with it, you can use the handles as well, right? The arrows. Now, this also needs to be rotated forward a little bit. So I'm going to hit E for rotate, right? W is move, E is rotate. Remember, they're right here though, move, rotate. And you see if you hold them down, it tells you what the quick key is. Scale, right? You see it says R. But we want rotate. And we can, of course, grab the blue to rotate along the blue, or the green or the red. But of course, there's view rotate as well, middle mouse button. But that's also the outside one. So there is actually a handle for view rotate. It's just that middle mouse button does it. And instead, I just kind of rotated it to be faced forward a little more instead of sideways. Let W to move in a little bit, down a little bit. E for rotate again. And you notice how maybe I want to rotate it at a weird angle, which these guys don't line up to? That's where that view rotate's really handy, right? W for move it down a little bit again. Remember, I'm just using middle mouse button because I love, particularly for this stuff, when we do our environmental furniture and stuff like that, we'll use the handles a lot more. But for like characters, creatures, the view stuff is actually pretty fast and easy. So I'm going to do another extrusion, right? Remember, it's right here, extrude region. If you right-click though, right, remember we're in face mode, if you right-click, you'll see it is all right here. All the extrude tools are all there. So remember, you're going to have these options there as well. But the quick key for it is Control E. Control E for extrusion. See how it's on now? It is that tool. And then middle mouse button to kind of do the free extrude. And then I can E for rotate. And we can use that view rotate again, middle mouse button. W for move, middle mouse button for view move. You see how we can kind of move it around, kind of rotate it so it starts to bend up this way. We'll do another extrude. Remember, you can grab the yellow plus, and that just moves it exactly along the direction of the face. But the outer one, which is middle mouse button also, is kind of your view. In this case, I'll hit W to view move it though. E for rotate, right? Remember, they're all right here though. We can rotate that guy a little bit. Middle mouse button, right, for view rotate. If I want, see how I can maybe adjust the shape a little more. 2 for edge mode. I can grab this edge. W for move. Kind of view move it in a little bit. You can see how it's kind of getting a little skewed. Grab that edge. View move it. You see how view move can be cool because it really allows you to kind of just adjust it exactly to what your camera's seeing. Remember, Alt left, rotate your camera, Alt middle moves, Alt right mouse button zooms. There we go. And so we're just kind of straightening up that shape a little bit. So I'll hit 3 to go back to face mode and select that face again. Maybe move it up again, middle mouse button for view move. And we'll do one more extrusion here. Oops, that's bevel, my bad. Extrude. Remember, you can grab the plus handle or this guy, although the white circle is just view extrude, so if you just hold down middle mouse button, that does view extrude also. There we go. And now what I want to do, and this is one of the cool things to note about Blender, mine doesn't really work this way. 3D Studio Max can. The extrude's still on. The thing is, you can actually go select something different while the extrude's still on. So if I select this face, you notice how the extrude tool is still on, but we're now going to extrude a different face. So I can just middle mouse click to extrude that face. And remember, you just move your mouse, E for rotate, right? Remember, you can always grab these handles, just left mouse button or middle mouse button, right? But middle mouse button does view, right? And we'll do another extrusion. Hold down middle mouse button, drag, because that'll view extrude it. E for rotate, middle mouse button for view rotate. Now this time we want to use scale, right? And that's R. And you'll notice that this, of course, gives us handles as well in the center one, but these, we can do a uniform scale, where we'll scale all three at the same time by holding down middle mouse button. And if you drag to the right, it gets bigger. If you drag to the left, it gets smaller. And you see how it kind of tapers? That crab legs kind of thing. Now the cool thing is I can hit 2 for edge mode, right? Or go up here. I can double click on an edge, double left click on an edge. It selects an edge loop. And I can hold down middle mouse button to scale that in a little bit. And I can hit W for move to move that up and maybe forward a little bit. You see I'm using middle mouse button from different views, right? Alt left mouse button, rotate the camera around. And now you can see we've got the start of kind of a crab leg for this guy. Now that's going to be a great place to stop. I'm going to be doing the exact same thing on the next video, right? Kind of off the side one here for our next video. So we'll keep seeing this stuff. We're actually primarily going to be using loop cut, extrude, and things like our move, rotate, and scales on this crab, right? We're not going to get into every tool yet at all. But this will give us some good fundamentals, get us used to the environment. This is really to get you guys started, right? The crab is not due this week. It's, we're going to have several weeks to work on it, to build the whole thing. We'll just do progress checks. But that'll be a great place. Of course, I can go File. In this case, since I haven't saved it yet, go to Save As. And what it does, you see how it brings up the save folders here. And you'll notice that this little kind of arrow, I can go up. In this case, I'll just kind of go to the desktop for our class stuff. So you can go to just desktop if you want. And you can create a new folder, right? So this is a new folder right there. Click on that. We can call this crab, right? Underscore, say 3D game art, right? And usually using underscores as part of your folder conventions is good. So crab, but it's our 3D game art class, and that's our folder. And now I can just double click on that folder, and I can go down here and I can name it. So we can just call it crab underscore 3D game underscore art, and save as. And now we have our crab saved. So if I go to File, Open, just as long as you go to the folder, right, wherever you've saved it, there's your Blender file. So there we go. It's a good start for this, and we're going to keep using a lot of the same tools as we go along.